Hi, I'm Daniel Martin with Studio Atlanta, and today I have a few interesting and kind of creepy things I want to tell you about the history of photography. The word photography is from an old Greek word meaning to draw with light. The first photograph that was ever taken, you'll see it below, was taken by a French scientist named Joseph. I have no idea how to pronounce his last name. He captured the image in 1826, and it took 8 hours of exposure to get this image, and I still don't know what it is. But it's odd. Some of the most interesting photographs in the 1800s were taking pictures of corpses. I'm going to put below, you'll see a group of 5 kids, and the girl on the far right is deceased. I'm glad that's still not popular. I wouldn't want to do that kind of photography today. Yeah, it's some crazy stuff back in the 1800s. Kodak was founded by George Eastman in 1888, and they asked him why he picked the word Kodak, and he said he thought the letter K looked strong. I don't really know what that means, but apparently it worked for him, at least for about 100 years it did. They're not too much now, but back in the 80s, Kodak was pretty big. The most expensive camera ever sold was a Leica Zero. I think it was 1928, but I don't know how much it was sold for, but if it was a Leica Zero, I imagine it was a lot. The chemicals that were used to develop photographs back in the 1800s contained mercury and silver nitrate and lye. In fact, many photographers would get sick and have to take a lot of time off, and some of them even went crazy and died from it. So back in the 80s, when I first started in photography, I was processing film in a 1-hour lab, and we knew then the chemicals, I mean, it wasn't like the chemicals they had then, but it still wasn't something that you just wanted to be, loose with. I mean, we still knew it had some dangers to it. You're supposed to wear gloves and stuff for all that, and sometimes we did, sometimes we didn't, but what you gonna do? That's how we are. We're guys. Now, I know some of you guys have seen the westerns where the guy pulls the hood over his head and holds up the little flash, and it pops off a little flash of light. It was really a tiny little explosion, and what happened a lot was the explosion was too big. That doesn't sound very safe to me. I'd hate to be at a wedding shooting pictures and holding something that's going to blow up in my right hand, but you'll see that picture below, and that's just crazy. I'm glad they got that fixed. The first digital camera ever invented was in 1975 by a guy named Steve Sasson, who worked for Kodak. He was made to keep it a very tight secret, and the first picture that they took with it took 8 minutes to get an exposure, and the pixels in the camera had 0.01 pixel. So they weren't going to make a very big print with that, but now we've got cameras, some of them upwards of 100 megapixels, most of them around 40, but it varies, but it's a whole lot more than 0.01, that's for sure. In 1987, the Knoll brothers invented a piece of software called Image Pro, which was later purchased by Adobe and is known today as what we know as Photoshop. When it first came out, it was 1990, I believe it was, and it was only available for Macs. So, but Mac is always the best, so go with the Macs. I'm sure most of you guys already have Macs anyway, and those that you don't need to get into them. So anyway, interesting. Before digital cameras really took over, the United States would send spy satellites into space to spy on Russia. I think there were 20 satellites, and each satellite had 60 miles worth of film on it so they could video this, and they would bring it back, dump it in the ocean, recover it, and process it from there, which is, I guess they're probably glad they've got digital cameras now. When I tried to join the Air Force, they wouldn't let me in because I had some neck issues, but I was going to do photography for the Air Force, and that would have probably been some film times. I don't know if they would have had digital back then or not, but it would have been close. It would have been interesting, but I think this has been a pretty neat thing to check out. I mean, some of this stuff is just weird. I mean, things change so much, but I hope you enjoyed it as much as I do, and if you're taking a PPA test to get your certification, don't do like I did. I got all the photography questions right, and I didn't know there was a section on history, and I bombed it, and so I had to take it twice. So if you're taking your PPA exam, learn the history. It's going to be on the test. So y'all have a good day, and I hope you enjoyed this, and hit like down at the bottom and hit subscribe. Thank you.